Appreciate being back. This is a fantastic venue for us to exchange ideas, and I'm going to talk about practice, some elements of practice of the decision model. Specifically, I work with fun facts on Sapiens Decision. We're a very mature product. We're in production at scale in 3 of the top 5 banks in the US. We deliver a decision manager where we do business logic modeling and management, 2 ways of implementation. One is decision execution, our own engine, and the other is through adapters to Drools, Java, XML, ODM. Capita is our partner in this RPA venture. Their market position is they're the market leader in BPM in the UK, 24% share of a $10 billion market. Derek, take note. This is their credentials. They're managing about 21 million life policies and 550 occupational pension schemes with 4 million members. They deal with many of the big names in the UK. Their RPA journey started in 2011 with Blue Prism implementing at O2, starting at 25,000 transactions a month of a total 1 million transactions. By 2016, they're up to 1.3 million robotic transactions a month out of a total of 1.7, saving from 420 FTE down to 160 FTE. You can see this was a phenomenally successful implementation for them. They're continuing to develop that implementation. They feel very good about this. And based upon this great success, they decided to roll out RPA across their major line of business, which is pension fund administration. Their pilot started in 2011. The full plan details were chosen as their pilot area. They had a multi-month program of analysis, building and testing, and they targeted 10 FTEs. The outcome was very disappointing. The process was significantly more complex than the documentation described or that they expected or that they had experienced before. Many human decisions, so they canceled the project after that failure. They started to rethink. They thought, what do people do? They excel at customer contact. What do robots excel at? Robots really excel at going to fetch data, replacing repetitive processes, light integration access to legacy systems, which for a business process outsourcer is very important. And then finally, what to do about logic. And so they saw decision management as a way for consistent application of business logic that has been externalized, visualized, and tested for accuracy, and most importantly for them, reusable, so that they can use the same logic across multiple clients. So the new solution they came up with was decision-enabled automation, DA they call it, where processes are reframed as decisions. Decisions are separated from the automations, and most important, a single glossary so that they could describe their problem once and use it many different places. So this is what the solution looks like. Some form of form, a decision process, a decision automation engine, and robots. And most importantly of all, to bind them together, a glossary maintaining mappings between all these systems so that we can use these same decisions in multiple different systems. So this implementation has allowed them to remove the knowledge worker from out of the process, separate the knowledge worker, and run the process independently and use the knowledge worker only for those places where it's appropriate for the knowledge worker to be used. So when to use traditional RPA? When data and rules are encoded together in automation and processes are leaned and comprehensively mapped, and there's volume and scale. In other words, automated transactions. If you want to automate process, look at decision-enabled automation, where processes are conditionally complex, reuse possible when multiple business units are making the same sets of decisions. So this is not cognitive yet. That's our next step. A declarative decision model plus RPA or IoT or API-driven data provides a fundament for great customer experience on the front end, cognitive and data-driven decisions. So what we learned from this experience of our first pilot, which completed back in December, was that this is possible. Where we are now is in our first project. Where we intend to go is to roll this out across 28 insurance companies where Capita is the principal business process outsource. Our intention is to be able to reuse the same basic 42 processes that are implemented in insurance management, insurance life cycle, life insurance life cycle, and pension life cycles to automate and reduce significantly, very significantly, the total manpower necessary to operate these solutions. So with that, I have a very brief demo. It's not a true demo. It is actually a video. I have a certain dispensation from the powers that are, and I'm just going to play it. It's pretty boring because all you're going to see is screens popping, but this is a kind of a map of where we are. And again, if you remember the solution, we have an initial e-form entry. These e-forms are actually generated by the decision tool, and then they're prettied up by actual artists. But the glossary generates the data labels and the data types to the e-form. The e-form is a means of initiating the process. You must understand that a BPO typically does not have access to the underlying technology and has to start with what's given. So the technology we're going to be talking to are multiple different systems, in fact 5 or 6 different systems, one of which was the first automation generation, which was a workflow tool, some sort of process tool that was implemented to actually manage the entire life cycle. And that workflow tool is what we're actually going to be addressing, what the robot is going to be addressing, and the underlying screens from the mainframes and the legacy systems that actually ran the different components of this tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in the initial data to kick it off. That's going to be sent to decision. Decision runs a set of decisions which determine which systems we're going to, which RPA agents we're going to be calling, what data we're calling for, and by the way, and it's going to first, of course, test the data that has been keyed in for validity, gather the information, gather from that in entry what information needs to gather, send off to the agents to go and gather it. That the agents are going to return that data. Decision is going to determine the quality of that data for data acceptance. And once having determined that data, is going to determine the actions to be taken based upon the data being returned. Once it's decided what actions are to be taken, we have a validation step, a manual validation step by agent. This has been inserted by Capita for quality purposes. There are thoughts that this actually, once we develop some confidence, can be skipped. And then once the manual validation has been done or additional information put into the tool by the agent, the data is going to be analyzed for acceptability, and then action is going to be initiated amongst the multiple agents. So the actions could be letters being sent, bank transfers being initiated, policies canceled, or whatever the actual action called for in the process. The essential importance of the reusability of the process is that we see all the processes that we're automating follow the same pattern. Go out and get the data I'm looking for, check the data, initiate the action based upon the data I've been returned. That's essentially the process. And so if we can boil every one of those insurance policy actions down to that process, then we can automate it by the reusability of the decisions. So any questions up to that point? Everybody get it? So now you'll watch some screens flashing. As I say, it's pretty boring. But what we're seeing now is the agent entering the data. And once that's done, it says get details. What we're doing is we're going into the workflow tool, which is this underlying workflow tool here. The workflow tool is calling the particular screens. The robot is entering the data being given and returning and getting returned to it the data from the system. We're going through a succession of workflow screens. You see them pop up every now and again. This is Blue Prism, yeah. Actually, in our pilot, we used 4 different vendors for the RPA robots before we determined on vendor. And the point is the solution had to be technology independent. So we had to use any robot, as it were. And so the decision execution environment provides the task broker that actually drives the robot. So we see we're getting towards the end of the data gathering process. And you see decision executing here. What decision is doing is evaluating that and returning to the web form the information that it's got from the underlying policies. This agent is doing some additional work that we were unable to, in the pilot, automate. This is the kind of work that it's considered important to have a human manage. This is, for example, recognition of identity. Although that recognition of identity, I believe that will be automated in due course. And once having filled in the form, the agent is going to submit the form, and we're off to the races. What we're going to do now is the agents are going to actually execute the instructions. And this may be a payment, this may be a cancellation, this may be a letter sent to the customer. There are relatively few types of actions that we do, and we're trying to standardize those types of actions, because at the end of the day, the value of the added value of this process, the number of FTEs it can remove, is going to be determined by how much work has to be done to implement the solution for a given problem. So we've reached the end of the line, the action has been taken, the return has been done, and that's the video. So any questions?